guys, Dr. Will here from Miami Spine and Performance. We're here for part 3. We've got Liam, our lovely patient. She's already been adjusted. We've done some soft tissue work on her neck. In case you have not watched the first 2 videos, go back and give them a watch. If not, I'm going to explain to you guys kind of what's going on with her hips. Like I mentioned in the first video, she's had some issues in her hip, particularly her left hip, that has kind of eventually caused some issues potentially in the knee. She's very physically active, including things like martial arts and yoga. So she wants to be able to use her hips to her full capacity so that she can stay physically active. So when I'm looking at a patient with hip pain, right, we actually have an MRI, so we know structurally what's going on, right? We'll keep that a secret for now, but we structurally know what's going on. However, what the MRI cannot tell you is how you ended up there, right? Why did this tissue tear? Why is this tissue inflamed? Why did this disc herniate, right? So that's what we try to do as chiropractors, and that's what we do here in this office is we don't just look at the diagnosis, but we look at the why. So we're going to take a look at the hip here. Now, the most important motion of the hip, and this is whether you're a practitioner or whether you're a patient at home, sitting on your couch watching chiropractor YouTube videos, the most important motion for you to have of your hip is rotation, right? This is a ball and socket joint, so if you're wondering whether or not you have a good hip, a flexible hip, a strong hip, check your rotation, okay? So there's external rotation, which is this direction, right? Those of you that know pigeon pose and things like that, we're looking at external rotation. And then we've got internal rotation, which is this here, right? And you can see she's got a lot of internal rotation. If you're sitting at home, check your internal rotation. It's probably not that good, right? This is pretty exceptional. However, we also want to look at how much internal and external rotation Liam actually can control. So Liam, I'm going to have you rotate your foot towards me slowly, please. Good, okay. So if we stop here, you can relax your hip. This is the amount of external rotation that Liam really has good control over, right? So when she's doing martial arts, when she's doing yoga, this is the amount of external rotation that her brain and hip are agreed upon, right? This is what we're going to make work. However, she's got quite a bit more wiggle room beyond that, right? So she has capacity for even more range of motion. Now I'm going to go into internal rotation. Go ahead and rotate away from me, please, slowly. Okay, so we can see that this is, again, the agreed upon contractual amount of internal rotation between her brain and her hip. But if we let her relax, she's got quite a bit more real estate in there as well. Okay, and this is the hip that she's had some issues on. So our goal is to close the gap, right? Liam has plenty of flexibility in her hip, right? She doesn't need to do stretching till the end of time, right? She's not that kind of problem. Her problem is that her brain and her hip are not on the same page as to what the plan is, right? Her brain is saying, we've got this much external rotation, and her hip says, well, we've got this much, right? So you want the brain and the hip to be on the same page. That, to me, is a proper definition of a strong and mobile hip. So if you're watching at home, check how much your hip actually has, and then check how much actively it has. And if there's a gap between there, then we want to close that gap. Now we'll look at the other hip, right? You're like, whoa, doc, it's your left hip that's in pain, right? Well, it's all one body, right? The body's not a machine, it's a garden. So we have to check both sides of the body, right? We want to check the other hip so that we have a point of comparison, and also that it gives us a better picture of kind of what we're dealing with, right? It's possible that there's something wrong with this hip, and so she's overusing this hip, and that's causing pain. But you don't know unless you check. And again, just because we have an MRI of this hip doesn't mean we understand the story of how her pelvis works, and how her knees work, and how her hips work, right? That's what comes from the exam itself. So we're going to do the same thing. If you guys are watching at home, again, hip rotation is the most important thing to check with the hip. Whether you're self-evaluating, or you're a provider, or you're a student, hip rotation is where it's at. So again, we're going to check external rotation, and we're going to check, you guys seeing this? Internal rotation. This is an incredible amount of internal rotation, right? If you guys are testing this at home and you have more internal rotation than this, call my office, I got a t-shirt for you, because this is the best internal rotation that I've ever seen in my life, right? But you guys know that it doesn't tell the whole story, okay? So I'm going to have Liam rotate her foot out towards me slowly. Good. So again, if you were just looking at this for what it is, she has exceptional internal rotation, some of the best that I've ever seen. However, we've got all this range in the hip that is unaccounted for, right? The hip is just hanging out in the socket here. There's no brain-hip connection. So you have to measure each person, and you have to measure yourself based on your own standards, right? She has, if I wish I had her active hip rotation, right? If I had her hip rotation, I might be a jiu-jitsu world champion right now, but I'm not, because I don't have that kind of hip rotation. So again, we want to close the gap between internal active and internal passive. Now I'm going to have you rotate away from me. What do you think, guys? I'm just kidding. Again, she's got extraordinary internal rotation and a little bit limited in external rotation. Actively, she can only go to about there, and we've got all that range. So what's super interesting about this case, and the reason why I wanted to share it with you, is because on the face of it, her hips are extremely mobile and extremely flexible, right? And that's, I think most of us think the definition of a healthy hip is we think of a yogi, or we think of a sprinter or track and field athlete, someone that's just got incredible flexibility in their hips. However, we have to dig a little bit deeper, and actually, if you look at this case specifically, even though her issue is on this hip, the fundamental problem is actually with this hip, right? She had a little bit more of a healthier environment on the other hip as far as the difference between active and passive range than she did on this hip, okay? So, you guys are like, Dr. Will, shut up, I'm tired of you talking, show me something, okay? So I'm gonna show you guys how we're gonna treat this issue specifically, okay? So I'm gonna have you lie on your left side, please. We're going to start with some soft tissue work, and we're going to open up the hip rotators, and I'm going to have her move actively so that we can get some additional motion. So what I'm going to have you do, scoot a little bit this way for me, towards this edge. So I'm going to have her bring her knee up like this, and then she's going to go through and rotate the hip this way. Okay, that's going to be the motion. So whenever I'm doing soft tissue work on the hip, especially in a case like hers where our issue is we have more of a motor control and active issue, I want her to be moving while I'm working through the soft tissue. So I'm going to be working through the hip rotators, and I'm going to have her move her hip through that active range. So as you guys know, we've got the piriformis right through here. This is kind of the prime rotator of the hip, and then we've got the gemelli and obturator muscles. So I'm going to put my thumb right on the piriformis. Then I'm going to have Liam go ahead and bring your knee up this way. Good. And rotate your foot towards the ground. And then I'm going to apply a little extra pressure through there like that. Coming back. And again. So we're working on the piriformis right now. And come down. So I'm just giving her a little bit of additional pressure. You okay here?
Yeah.
Stretch. Now we're going to work some internal rotation. So these muscles also do internal rotation a little bit lower. I'm going to keep my hand here. I'm going to be pressing right on the muscle, and then I'm just going to have you keep your knees together. Just pick your foot up like that. Okay. So again, we're working through the hip rotator, so I'm having her actively move, right? Because ultimately the issue is active movement, but the source of the problem is actually the muscle that's jammed up. So I'm going to get the muscles online with the brain so that we can get good motion here. Then what I'm going to have her do right after this is go through some rehabilitation exercises. So in the next video, in part 4, I'm going to show you guys some exercises that I will use in the office with Liam, as well as exercises you can do at home if you did our little hip rotation self-check and Liam was making you feel a little bit self-conscious with her range. If you feel like you'd like a little bit more hip rotation, then I'm going to show you how to get it. See you guys next time.